Welcome to Live Like an Acrobat. I'm your host, Shanae Stiletto, two-time world champion in acrobatic gymnastics, USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame member, and circ artist. I am currently in bankruptcy court seeking to hold USA Gymnastics legally accountable for the sexual abuses I suffered at the hands of my former USA Gymnastics coach, David Rickbaum, for the first time. Please make sure to check out extended conversations and interactive content of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast on the circuspreneur.blog.com. On this episode of Live Like an Acrobat, I am fortunate to have as my special co-host my former acrobatic gymnastics partner, two-time world champion in acrobatic gymnastics, USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame member, Cirque du Soleil alumni, creator of Acro Army for America's Got Talent, and internationally award-winning acrobatic choreographer for 25 years, LGBTQ plus legendary figure within acrobatic gymnastics, Arthur Davis. Together, we are spotlighting the LGBTQ plus community in acrobatic gymnastics in honor of Pride Month, in an advocative effort to remind the USA Gymnastics Organization and acrobatic gymnastics community that the pride of the LGBTQ plus community should be at the forefront of their athlete-centric efforts every day. Please join me and my co-host Arthur Davis as we interview special guests, which will include LGBTQ plus ally within the sport, Sean Shields, who is a former Team USA member for acrobatic gymnastics and competed for 4 years on the team as a men's group from Acrobatic Gymnastics Club, EAGC. Our anonymous guest, who is a recently retired athlete and for whom we will share her stories and reflections. Arthur Valverde, who is representing the POC LGBTQ plus members within the sport and is a current acro coach in San Antonio, Texas, and who was previously involved in men's artistic, TNT, and various circus companies across the U.S. Derrick Chisamore is a former LGBTQ plus acro athlete who began as an artistic gymnast before transitioning into acrobatic gymnastics, and in 2005 became part of the JONT with his partner Brandon Aguinaldo. He retired at the age of 20 in 2007 and was a level 10 men's pair base in his last competitive season. And lastly, Canadian LGBTQ plus former acrobatic gymnast Bobby Knight, who is a classically trained artistic and trampoline gymnast from Calgary, Alberta. He started acrobatics in his first year of university in Kelowna, British Columbia. Bobby Knight has coached since he was 14 years old and continues to do so to this day. We are so grateful to have these amazing guests on the show. Arthur Davis brought an ease to one's sexuality in a way that I, as a young acrobat, had never experienced before. There was an air of feeling so deeply comfortable in one's skin which he exuded that I knew all ways of what he represented within society as a gay man was right. He was simply an expression of love. In loving oneself in a world that tries to constantly tell you who you should be and how you should love, I found Arthur's unreliance on the societal constructs to be irrefutably as if he were already journeyed home with others lost. His influence gave me the confidence to explore and be available to all aspects of my own sexuality, without any feelings of guilt or fear, and take possession of my own fluidity. I knew from what Arthur represented so well, along with other very important LGBTQ people in my life, that it was the most natural thing to do, that it was one of the most valuable explorations one can make, and that it's a never-ending evolution throughout one's life and filled with colorful, soulful adventures. I cannot convey strongly enough how much of acro's evolution and continued transformation has come through the presence of its LGBTQ plus community. Acro wouldn't be what it is now if not for its LGBTQ plus members who represent the future consistently before anyone else can but glimpse it. Being privileged to be up close and personal with an LGBTQIA athlete is to be privy of what's to come, to be literally on the pulse. With that said, I dedicate this episode to all of the beautiful LGBTQ lives lost in the Pulse nightclub terrorist attack, and to the entire LGBTQIA community at large, as we celebrate Pride Month, which comes to a close with the landmark ruling by the Supreme Court that states federal civil rights law protects gay, lesbian, and transgender workers. I also want to acknowledge how grateful I am as I witness the solidarity between the Black Lives Matter movement and the LGBTQ plus community, and how in queer spaces the conversation is expanding around issues of racial bias within its own environment, in an effort for the LGBTQ plus community to be a continued space of inclusivity and diversity. To the entire LGBTQ plus community in acrobatic gymnastics and USA Gymnastics, we love you, we see you, and we stand for your continued visibility, power, equality, and acceptance within the sport now and beyond. Please allow me to introduce my special co-host, Arthur Davis.
First off, I want to just say a huge thank you to Shanae. So much appreciation for thinking of this subject this week for your podcast and for asking me to co-host. It's obviously something that's really personal and dear to my heart, and it's so exciting to get to talk about this and share our voices to really push forward equality, especially during this time of Black Lives Matter, and that being the primary focus of our world culture and our national culture right now, which I think is the most important. Thinking about this personally for myself kind of takes a back seat, though I think, focusing on pride in general and equality in general and relating it to the athletes in our sport at this time will only help further equality and will just add to the movement. So I really appreciate you taking this time out to do that. But it's very important for me to say at this moment. I grew up in a very strict religion, Seventh-day Adventism, that of course said that being gay was wrong. And you're going to hell for being gay, was the very least of it. There was, of course, a lot of repression, and I was, because of that, wasn't really allowed to confront that even in myself or reconcile it till in my early 20s, which coincidentally is right when I started acro. I developed a love for gymnastics really early on, 5 or 6 years old. I couldn't stop myself from flipping around the house, and it really defined me as a person growing up, and it allowed me to express myself in all the ways that I wanted to express myself, but really couldn't, because my religion also said I wasn't allowed to dance, which is a choreographer and someone who just, loves to move for a living. It was very challenging, but it allowed me to really develop a passion for the sport that combines working together with dance and gymnastics, all the things that I love. So when I got into acro, I think I was 19 when I officially started acro. I had seen it about a year before that, and it just completely blew my mind. When I got into acro, I was at that point really starting to confront my own sexuality. And for the first year that I competed, I was in the closet. So, and even to myself. So, there was a lot of tentativeness, and I wasn't able to fully express myself at that point. Then I left to Europe for the year and did an exchange program at a school there. And as a result of that time away, I really came to the conclusion that I was gay. And when I started back up in acro again, my second year competing, I was really at the point where I was ready to come out to my family, my friends, the world. And when you get to that point, you risk losing all of that, which is a really great place to be in retrospect, just because it allows you to find the courage to really be who you are. One of the main differences between that and our race issues at this point is that we can hide it. Being gay, you can hide it. And that wasn't great for me, and also it saved me in many cases. So when I first started the season of my second year in acro, I got really involved in the team, and I was coaching. I was really starting to excel at what I was doing, and I became an elite athlete in my second year doing acro, which was really fortunate for me. And it's funny, that year at nationals is when everything kind of came to a head, and I ended up coming out to my team, my coaches, kind of on a one-on-one basis. And as a result of that, at nationals, there were a couple parents that asked that I not be around their children at all because they were scared for them. And of course, I didn't expect that, and it was slightly devastating because all of a sudden you're looked at like you're some sort of criminal. But it really made me doubly determined to prove that I was a good person and that I was a safe person, and that me expressing this part of myself was just a part of who I am, and a healthy part of who I am. So that really started the journey for me. So really, when I first came out, that year was the hardest thing. As I continued in acro, I didn't see really any openly gay athletes at all in my sport. I definitely had, my assumptions about who might be gay here and there, but I didn't see that at all. I happened to be with a boyfriend at the time, my first boyfriend, who was very, very outspoken, and he was fighting for, the causes of gay people and trans people, queer people of every race and every economic status was really his focus at the time. So that kind of helped me gain motivation and courage to really express myself. Over the next 6 or 7 years, I continued to compete and excel at my sport, and being gay really didn't come up. I didn't push it as far as, explaining to everyone all the time. I flew under the radar a little bit, but I think everyone was aware that I was gay. And in general, I felt an acceptance from my peers and my community. I didn't ever, of course, address it officially with USA Gymnastics, but it also didn't seem to be that big of an issue. So I didn't really know how they felt about it, but I assumed people knew and just didn't really look at it too closely. When I finally became partners with Shanae, which was, I think, 7 or 8 years in, we had such a magical connection right away. And we were waiting at that time to have our coach, Yuri, would be our coach, come from Russia. I'd done a bunch of work with my family with lawyers to try to get him to be able to come to the country. And so we were waiting for the first several months of our being together. And during that time, our current coach at that time, his name was David, told us in one conversation that there was no way we'd ever be able to be world champions because I was gay and she was black. And that really shook me to the core at the moment that it happened for a variety of reasons. A lot for her and, of course, for me, because I felt, I heard that there would be this big limitation. But I rebelled against that, and I've always rebelled against any form of limitation or restriction of self-expression. And, I'm the kind of person, and Shanae's the kind of person that if you kick us when we're down, we're just going to keep getting back up, and we won't stay down. And I'm really grateful for that. I was lucky enough at that time to have the support of my family and friends to really keep me bolstered and going. Not everybody has that. So I would love to help create a space in acro that's a little more visible, a lot more visible and outspoken in the support of LGBTQIA members. When Yuri was finally able to come to the country and start coaching us right away, I told him immediately because I just didn't want it to be an issue and I wanted to confront any difficulties right away. So I was very nervous about it because I looked up to this man so much who already had, several world champions and had moved his whole life to come here. And he literally said to me when I told him, who cares? It's like, I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. It just matters to me that you have character. And he showed that support to myself and Shanae to this day and really encouraged us to be ourselves. I was choreographing our routines and we were making up a bunch of, how we looked and how we moved. And he was in support of that, any sort of creative freedom. So I didn't feel any restriction from him. And I'm so grateful for that because I think that really helped spur us forward. And ultimately, your coach during that journey is the most important person in your life. They have the most influence in that direction because you're so passionate and they really hold the keys to unlocking that success. And so he's really the reason for that success. Again, not everyone has that support, and I feel very fortunate. So with this episode and this podcast, my intention is to really create hope, first of all, for any athletes that feel marginalized or unsupported. I'd like to create the awareness of what needs to change, a safe space for diverse and LGBTQIA athletes, as well as a future vision of inclusivity for our sport in the US and worldwide. I'm so grateful for our guest today and this conversation and Shanae. So thank you, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Hi, Bobby.
Hello.
How are you both?
Hey, I'm doing well.
I'm doing lovely. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking. And thank you so much for joining me and my special co-host, Arthur Davis, on the show today, and for participating in this spotlight episode where we are intending will bring more awareness and education about the LGBTQ community in acro in an effort to provide more compassion and support for the LGBTQIA community that exists within acrobatic gymnastics and USA Gymnastics as a whole. We are so grateful that you, as an ally to the LGBTQIA community within acro, felt called to and inspired to share your experiences and reflections on what it is like to be an ally to the LGBTQ community, and also your thoughts about how best to create a better environment for them by providing an informative allyship perspective. I loved what you shared, Sean, about your own personal transformation into an ally for the LGBTQ community. You shared that you didn't start acrobatics until you were in 8th or 9th grade and that you hadn't been doing any type of gymnastics prior to it. John, you said you were never really exposed to the LGBT+ community until you started acrobatic gymnastics, and that your career as an acrobat really forced you to learn and grow as a person in terms of what is your role in relationship to the LGBT community.
Sean, you also added additionally, by way of that growth, that it provided you with a lot of experience in acro that you think would be related to the conversation of being LGBT plus in the sport, and how many of the males in acro are finding their own ways to understand and express their masculinity and sexual identities. We've also been very fortunate to have a recent former member of the acro LGBTQ community on the show who was asked to stay anonymous, but wanted her experiences shared through us. Additionally, we have 2 more members of the acro LGBTQ community who were so incredibly grateful to share their experiences and answers to our questions. They are current acro coach and former artistic gymnast and TNT competitor Arthur Valverde and former acrobatic gymnast Derrick Chisamore. And as a surprise special live guest, we wanted to include an international voice. Please welcome Canadian neighbor and former LGBTQ acrobatic gymnast and current coach, Bobby Knight, to the show. So we understand that it takes a great level of vulnerability to share such private details of one's life, and we are so honored for all that they have shared with us, because it is our hope that by them sharing that they will find more freedom and security to exist as their full selves within the acro community, and that their voices will illuminate and liberate the voices of the other LGBTQ members as well, and that those within the acrobatic gymnastics community will be inspired to provide stronger allyship for them and for the entire LGBTQ community. So to begin our conversation, I will pass it over to my co-host, Arthur Davis.
Hi there. Shanae, I just want to say thanks so much again. I know I formally said that already, but I'm just so grateful for this experience and for the chance to share. And Sean and Bobby, for you guys to be on the show, as well as our other contributors. Very important. So Sean, I'll start with you. How does it feel to exist as an ally in the acrobatic gymnastics community to a member of the LGBTQIA community? Are there any challenges? What does your support and upliftment look like as an ally? And do you feel that LGBTQ members are uplifted in ways that respect them? And in what ways are those?
Dude, that's a big question, but I'm really excited to answer it. So I think the hardest part is just becoming an ally, because you have to meet the people, and you have to listen to them and understand them, and become a part of it as a whole. And I think just getting into it is really, really hard. I was in acro for not very long, only 6 years. And even the first 2 or 3 years I can remember back, it was still really weird having experiences with that community. But, upon talking to them and listening to them and just having conversations and opening myself up and having people open themselves up, it allows you to learn and understand and better foster a safe place for them and make them feel more comfortable.
I love that. So do you feel like the members are uplifted in ways that respect them in the community?
In my personal gym, absolutely. I can't speak for every gym, in USA, but I think just personally at EAGC, we do a great job of that as athletes.
That's so good to hear. Every gym counts, every gym matters. So knowing that there are safe places to go to where people can be accepted is great. Thanks so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Arthur Valverde has this to say when we asked him, how does it feel to exist in the acrobatic gymnastics community as a member of the LGBTQIA community? Are there any challenges, or are you uplifted in ways that respect you, and in what ways are those? He responded, at AGSA, it's not a consideration in the best way possible. As a coach, the kids were always aware that I could come into the gym with glitter or makeup for whatever reason, and Vladdy has always been accepting and never alienating. My challenges have come from the direction I've tried to take things, from creating routines and choosing skills that aren't conventional sport acro, from chest bands for boys to movement structures that aren't all about being masculine femme, or exploring we're in a mixed pair, so we have to do a routine that's obviously that. Sport acro has been my favorite discipline to be in as a queer person. I competed in men's artistic and TNT, and acro has always had more expression, which always made me happier than both of those sports.
so lovely. So Derrick Chisamore was an acrobat during the time that Shanae and I were competing, and he also had this to share when we asked him those same questions. Derrick says, I actually felt scared to be gay in acro. There was really only you to look up to. I think he's referring to myself in that aspect for me, because at that time I don't remember any really other openly gay people in acro. And he says, I can't tell you enough how you are an inspiration to me. Oh, that's a conversation for another day. But in regards to Derrick's personal feelings in the sport, he says it was very conflicting for him for a majority of the time. It wasn't until I became level 9, he says, that I felt confident enough to stand up for what I wanted to convey as an athlete and artist. Until then, I felt unseen and like I wasn't good enough. There were a lot of mental things that were going on during that developmental period, and it would have been nice to have the support from the sport that I needed. Instead, I felt this immense pressure to be a masculine ideal that the antiquated rules and regulations expected in order for me and my partner to be successful. I definitely, personally, Derrick, have felt that as well, just trying to fit into a certain masculine, feminine role. So I think that's really important to focus on as one of the ways we can expand our sport, that it's not only focused on this is masculine, this is feminine, and only those things are okay. So I'll pass it to Shanae.
Thank you, Arthur. Bobby, this next question is for you. How did it feel to exist in the acrobatic gymnastics community as a member of the LGBTQIA community? Were there any challenges? Were you uplifted in ways that respect you, and in what ways were those?
Generally speaking, I feel very welcomed by the acrobatic gymnastics community as a member of the LGBTQIA community. I didn't always feel comfortable being myself in MEG or in TNT. I wanted to dance around and wear a sparkly guitar just like the WAG gymnasts did. Acro wasn't a huge sport in Alberta. It still isn't, actually. It's still just a growing sport, and I wasn't exposed to it at all until I went to university. And when I entered the gym there with Shauna, she was absolutely amazing. I could express myself however I wanted. She didn't give me specifically masculine, feminine choreography. And I felt very at home, very comfortable in that community. And as a comparison, what I had grown up with in gymnastics, if I was afraid of a skill or if I was, acting girly, I'd hear lines like that's so gay or don't be a fag, even when I wasn't out openly, just for acting feminine. And I never heard connotations like that when I was in acrobatics. And it makes me so happy.
Wow. That's fascinating to see the contrast.
So good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I do know Shauna, and I love how accepting she is. And would you say that that's in general your experience in Canadian acro, Bobby?
I would. I know that there is, of course, small subsects of people that aren't as accepting as there are in every community, but generally speaking, it's been amazing, and I can't think of a specific negative experience. And, as for Shauna, she's still one of my best friends to this day. So I've only had good experiences there.
Well, I noted even when I was up there choreographing for your team this last summer in the gym that you're in now, they were just lovely. I had some really good conversations with the owners, and you seem to fit right in there and feel really at home expressing yourself. Would you say that's true?
I would say it's completely true. Yes. Yeah. I'm actually at a different gym now. These are due to very different reasons, but the whole environment there was absolutely amazing, and I'm really happy with how not only the owners made me feel accepted, but also everyone who was in that gym it was a very lovely environment.
God, that's good to hear. That's like a future vision we can hold on to.
Right? Well, I'm building a new program right now, and that's my whole goal is to keep it all that way and just build on creating such a positive and accepting environment where we can still, push for hard and international skills, but always make sure that everyone feels accepted and happy and loved.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Bobby. Next, our anonymous guest said that for her to be a member of the LGBTQIA community while in the acrobatic gymnastics community can be hard at times. Being a part of a sport where sameness can be key, yet not knowing many LGBTQ plus athletes on my team, it was hard to feel like I fit in at times. I was afraid it would be teased or outcast, especially being a girl who likes girls on a large team of 50 to 70 people, where the highest number of boys on the team was about 7. Deep down, I knew I was probably being paranoid, but during a time I was questioning my sexuality, it was hard to ignore those thoughts. One way that made me feel uplifted is later on in my acro career when I noticed that there were at least 2 open LGBTQ plus members on my team at one point, and possibly others who were less open about their identity. I also felt uplifted knowing that the world-renowned amazing choreographer in person, Arthur Davis himself, was such a key figure in the acro community at the same time as being openly in the LGBTQ community.
Oh my gosh. You know, one of the beautiful things about this opportunity, Shanae, is that I had this person who's anonymous come out to me yesterday, and I've worked with her over the years, and it was such an honor, especially, you know, where she's at this vulnerable point of not being fully out, which, Bobby, I think at some point you could probably understand, and Sean, you know, feel some compassion for her, because there's a time when it's just not okay and you're really nervous and scared, and her being brave enough to come forward and do that was like so touching, and I had no idea. So it's really amazing that we can provide a voice for her. So I'm so glad. So thank you, Shanae, for sharing that. It's really, really touching.
It's so beautiful.
Just so you know, you have been such an inspiration to all of the athletes that I've brought you around, and you've made them feel extremely comfortable. I haven't had any athletes come out to me specifically, but they felt like you were able to encapsulate their personality within their dance instead of a stereotype of their gender or a stereotype of what they should be in their dance.
Oh my gosh.
They felt very loved for that.
Well, thank you for that. Very touching. That's exactly my intention, you know, is to just create that open space for everyone to express themselves. So, wow. Thank you, Bobby. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Sean, this next question is for you. How do you think it feels to exist as an LGBTQA member within acrobatic gymnastics and USA Gymnastics?
I'm not a member, but I don't know. You mind rephrasing the question?
Yes. Well, as an ally and seeing their experiences, how do you think that it feels to be a member within acrobatic gymnastics, if that makes more sense?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's definitely different from other sports, especially gymnastics as a whole from other sports. And so at times when I look at it from the outside, I think like, why is it such a big deal? And then like you get into it on the inside and you're like, I understand, like especially like with the way that like the dance is written out for certain athletes, the skills that they have to perform, the way people act in the gym. It's definitely a much different experience from other sports.
Mm-hmm.
There's such a interdependence in acro, and it's so much, you know, physical contact, like similar to wrestling or, you know, but of course in wrestling you're taking each other down. In acro you're actually working together physically to bring each other up. And, you know, we all know, because we've all been in acro, that acro pushes you to the limit emotionally. And you have to be physically responsible and with those people so closely on a daily basis. So, Sean, what is your perspective on that as far as, you know, what you think about LGBTQ members?
I've always thought of acrobatic gymnastics groups as like little families, like little 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds marrying their 12-year-old tops as they, you know, do their skills. And it's like weird to think about it like that, but it almost is, because you're spending so much time in the gym together, so much time training, working, learning about each other. learning, how they work well, how they don't work, and you're all there to achieve the same common goal. And it's a lot like, starting, a marriage or starting a family. And I know it's like a super weird like analogy, but that's how I feel about it. And so you have to be able to talk to your partners and understand them. And so when you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, that's something that is bound to come up in your partnerships. And that's, I think, something that's integral for people to understand and for people to have conversations about.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Bobby, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's beautiful, first off, because it's a good way of putting it. You do spend so much time with your partners, and I have to say a lot of the lessons that I learned, not only as a coach, but also as an athlete in acro, they've been able to pervade into my relationships. They've shown me, how open communication can really help, even when you think internally it's going to hurt. Like when you're with your partner and you tell them that you're afraid of something, both in acro and in real life, that helps find a solution instead of constantly staying afraid.
I love that. That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely felt that with you, Shanae. I mean, we're definitely family, right? I mean, it's almost unexplainable, and I think you guys understand that bond that you have with your partner because you go through so much together. So personally, with you, Shanae, I always felt supported. And, granted, we both came from a marginalized perspective in a way, so you more than me. But I never felt judged. I always felt celebrated. And inside of that relationship, that was so important for our success, I think.
Yes, I agree. And likewise, I've always felt supported. I always felt seen by you, and I always felt that I could be exactly the way that I needed to be. And that's very important when you're going through so many challenging experiences, because you're all over the place when you're doing acro, and you reveal so many facets of yourself. And to be in a space where somebody is taking you fully for who you are when you're going through the most difficult experiences of your life is something I think, it's so invaluable, and I think it's a priceless experience that I had with you, Arthur. So thank you.
Agreed. And I always tell people, and you guys see how you feel about this, but that acro is a very intense experience like none other, except for to help you grow. So, a lot of people expand and grow from, traumatic situations. They have a car crash or they have something that really shakes them up. But acro on a daily basis is this practice that allows you to grow. So, Sean, hearing your story and how you came into this when you were 8 or 9 years old, and you had no idea about these things. You had no idea about, what it was like to work alongside gay people, or even, just look outside yourself. And it seems like acro's really helped you kind of get to that place, which is so incredible, and it helps you kind of function in society in a different way.
Yeah, it does. I think it's almost like, I almost wish like everyone was able to like try acro for at least just like a day, or like maybe be like a little camera above an acro practice so that they could just see what it's like just for a little bit, because it's such a different experience from everything else.
You are right. Yeah, absolutely. I asked Arthur Valverde, who's another person that contributed. He's the gay coach from Texas, and he said, my relationship with being queer and acro has definitely changed over the years. It made me recognize that the sport still causes gender bias in my thought process. An Australian club was training with us for a bit, and one of the boys wasn't moving in a masculine way. And my initial thought was, he needs to butch it up, which is something I don't think when my brain is in dance or circus mode. But when it is in an international acro mode, then I think that way. It's made me think of how frankly one-dimensional we see gender in acro, with men's pairs and men's fours routines, with most gyms thinking boys can't dance, or if they can, the routines are generally pretty cookie-cutter. I doubt I'll see an international routine in my lifetime that has romantic or cute overtones like a mixed pair, but for a women's pair or a men's pair. Now, when he made that statement, I love that statement.
I love it.
Because I would love to talk about men's four dance with him.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's such a beautiful discipline of acro, and it is the same dance.
Absolutely. And how beautiful just in the diversity. So in the circus world, you see male contortionists, female contortionists, and I'm using contortionists as an example because in acro, and this goes to an international level, there's rules against super flexible skills from guys, right? And to me, that's completely ridiculous because you have a different variety of capabilities from all different sorts of people. You have guys that are super flexible, and then you have women that are super strong. And likewise, with women, there's a lot of skills that are banned because they're masculine moves or they're too, they need too much strength to do them. But there's plenty of women that are stronger than a lot of men that I've seen. So, moving that conversation forward, I would personally just love to see those particular rules completely lifted because they just don't make sense to me. And especially when we start seeing more trans people in the sport, what's going to happen then?
I completely agree. I had a little itty-bitty guy who was just starting acro, and he already had his press. He was just coming fresh out of my pre-comp team, and he actually unfortunately quit because not only could we not find a partnership for him, but it was mostly because we didn't have another boy his age or his size that would fit him perfectly, but it was very difficult for him to be in a class with a bunch of girls the same age as him who were, I'm trying to describe the experience through how I see it, not necessarily how he may have seen it, so pardon me if I get any of this wrong, but I think it could be quite difficult because he didn't necessarily understand where he was going to be able to go in the sport. He didn't understand that he would have been able to do so many things as a top. And if we had the ability to do reverse mixed pair above level 5, there would have been so many places for him. He could have been competing with, there's other girls on my team he could have been competing with that were absolutely amazing bases that, would have lifted him up incredibly. I completely agree, and I think I can relate in a lot of ways just because our gym is one of the few gyms that has lots and lots of boys. We consistently have usually over 10 boys at a time in the gym every single year. And so I don't think if we had that many boys that I even would have been started in the sport of acro. And so I think I relate to that kid in where it's hard for guys to get involved in the sport, especially if they don't feel comfortable, especially being in the LGBTQ plus community. If there's not people that they can relate to and that they can feel safe around, there's just not going to be a place for them. And I think that's something that we should start working towards just for boys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to strengthen our numbers. It's going to strengthen our diversity. And how amazing would it be to see, a level 9 mixed pair where the girl is the base? I mean, it's completely possible. Yeah. Oh, incredible.
It would be incredible. It would be beautiful. And think about the way those athletes could push the boundaries of expression in their dance too. I think that there's so many opportunities that are being missed because we are putting ourselves, or the sport has been put into these 5 little boxes of partnerships that we can create.
And
so go ahead, Shani.
I was going to say, and I wanted to add, I want to intend for Arthur, because that statement to me that he made at the end is pretty heartbreaking, thinking that he'll never see that kind of romantic or cute overtones in a women's pair or men's pair in his lifetime. And I would like to intend that we will see that in our lifetime, because the thought that we would not ever see that, to me, I can't have that.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't reflect our American culture or Canadian culture, Bobby, or, our international culture. It does not reflect that because we have visible gay athletes, and it doesn't make sense why those stories can't be told as well.
I agree. And, part of doing that dance is acting too, right? So you don't have to necessarily be gay to have romantic undertones, and you don't necessarily have to be straight to have romantic undertones there. I think a lot of athletes are pushed into a place where they, these girls who are competing with guys in mixed pair feel like they have to act romantically towards that. There could be completely different relationships within the artistry that would all be equally beautiful, none better than the other.
but we're missing out on the opportunities because of these gender stereotypes.
That's so beautifully put.
I think we should put together a petition. Just saying. Just putting it out there.
Agreed. Agreed.
I would love to
work
just,
on that.
I would love to just sit down with some people and look at the code of points and just say, hey, let's move these pyramids back. Like there's one specific pyramid for men's 4 that I'm really mad about that got taken away, where the men's 4 would do 3 high and there would be another base doing flag. And I believe they got rid of it just because they were like, we can't have men looking like this. We don't want them to have their positions that way because it will go on TV.
Wow.
And
wow.
I was so mad I heard about that because I love that skill and I wanted to do it. But I would just love to sit down with like the people at FIG, say, hey, let's look at these. Let's review these.
I love that. And it really is at that level. It is at the USA G level. It would be great if our individual countries could just go ahead and spearhead that, because then it might be adopted. So
yeah, absolutely. If we just got people working together.
Yeah. Exactly.
For a large part, America inspires Canadian acro because we follow, for the most part, the USA JO rules. It's the same in WAG as well. We do have minor adoptions that we do sometimes, but we haven't had any changes to the USA JO code of points other than age restrictions at nationals. Aside from that, we use the exact same code that is published every year by you guys.
Well, that's perfect. It is like a family, and then it would pass right on.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
We'll get that working right after this podcast.
That'll be part 3.
Yeah,
there we go.
So Derrick Chisamore also had some extra experiences to share based upon what we asked Arthur. He said that it still to this day blows my mind that I spent so much of my time hiding and pretending to be something that they expected in order for me to get a good score and be respected. So often the conversation at practice was around how we would carry ourselves outside of the 2.5-minute routine. We were expected to walk a certain way, dress a certain way, and essentially be stripped off of any self-identifying characteristic. One time when I was about 15, one of the parents from the team I was with suggested I practice lowering my voice so that I could be more presentable at competitions.
Oh, wow. Breaking. Yeah.
Did that happen to any of you? Did that happen to you, Arthur? Was that ever suggested to you, Bobby? Did you have those similar experiences?
It was definitely suggested to me, not in acro though. I mean, again, I'm blessed by the fact that I had the most supportive acro experience one could have had, but definitely in MAG, because I'm very fruity, especially if you meet me in person. I am very expressive with not only my body language but also in my mannerisms, and I definitely got told to tone it down quite a bit and to talk in a deeper voice. It's one of those things I even subconsciously now answer the phone in a deeper voice than I would normally speak in. And it comes down to just one little thing that someone said to me a very long time ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I honor that, Bobby, because I think that's something that a lot of gay people go through, especially in the last, 10, 20 years. And it, of course, has gotten way better. But, for myself personally in acro, I was just always aware of that. So I tried to kind of butch it up a lot of times, especially in my dance. I wanted to make sure that that I expressed myself in a way that was appropriate. So I think had I been given the free rein to do whatever I wanted, it would have produced even more creativity, and it could have been, Shanae, you and I could have done really interesting routines where it was almost reversed, and you had a masculine role and I had a feminine role, and I think that would have allowed us to express ourselves even more. I was certainly told, never by Yuri, he never said anything like that to me, but definitely my coaches before that were very, wanting to make sure that I fit a certain mold, so to speak. So it's kind of an insidious, almost systemic situation where it's just present and you think about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
When you think that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Please continue.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When you think that you guys together as a partnership not only did incredibly that way, there's so much more I think that you guys could have even done. And it's actually hard to fathom because, again, you guys' routines, I go back and watch them sometimes, especially when I need choreography inspiration. And to think that, you know, that was limited for you guys is crazy to me because, again, I've seen you work firsthand as well, Arthur, and that would really push some beautiful bounds that I think could create a wonderful message.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I appreciate that so much. And honestly, in the last couple years, maybe within the last 5 years, I know it's happened to a couple of athletes that I know that are men that are really great dancers, that when they go out on the floor, we've gotten feedback from you know, all the judges, or maybe not all of them, but a good, you know, the majority of the judge opinion has been they're too feminine. And Yuri and I talk about this all the time because he completely rejects that. He's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, if someone moves gracefully, someone moves gracefully. If someone moves naturally, someone moves naturally. And it doesn't matter if it's slightly more feminine or masculine, or even a lot more feminine or masculine. And I agree 100%. And it's so frustrating to see that happen still in, you know, in this millennium. Like, really, you guys, you look in any form of dance, any, you know, other artistic expressional sport, and that doesn't really exist as much. Right. So I think we have some work to do as far as really opening that up.
Yeah,
I think it's when you look at like the way artistry is judged, it's not like there's a specific section that says masculine, feminine, or they dance straight or they dance gay or anything like that. It's weird because it just comes down to the specific judges and those specific people that are asking for those changes. And so it's just a really weird situation to be in, especially if you're an athlete trying to find out how to get better scores.
It's confusing, right? It's like,
yeah. And we had that when we were competing. It was very came down to very specific voices and being told that we were overly theatrical. When you think about it, even now, where you're in the pipeline of going from acrobatic gymnastics into the professional sphere as a circus artist, and them telling you that you need to limit those theatrics, and those theatrics are exactly what's going to be able to get you a longer career as an artist in the future, and how much that diminishes the potential that you have to expand more into being an artist before you become an artist in the acrobatic gymnastics realm.
Yeah, and I've seen some crazy deductions just from our region, not this year because I haven't watched this year and because of COVID, but from previous years where I've seen judges take away from hair, the way boys' hair looks on the floor, whether it's like too flowy or too long or whatever. I've seen deductions for the base not matching the top. That was a long time ago, but where they said like they just didn't look good enough together as people, that they just didn't match. Like the way they looked, it was just really weird deductions.
And you know, Sean, that's a good point, because that's actually the beauty of diversity is really what we're trying to embrace in this country and in this world on a full level. And that it's just a very small example there that you have of diversity and how it can be beautiful. Why does everyone have to look a certain way? I mean, I remember when I was with Amy, Shanae, right before you, there was a period of time where I was dyeing my hair a lot. So I dyed my hair black and blue. It was cut really nicely, but it definitely looked interesting. And I got pulled over by the judges and got a specific deduction, you know, and they said, yeah, we're deducting you because of your hair. It's not appropriate. And I, you know, of course I was really offended. And now when I think about when you did this interview with Brandon, Shanae, and how he was told to cut his afro, it's like it runs so deep that, you know, if we just focus on lightening that up and embracing diversity, it's going to help everything so much.
Exactly.
When I competed, I had bleach blonde hair, and so my hair is naturally brown, but it was possible to be a color that, you know, looked relatively natural. So I never experienced that type of bias from the judges, or at least not to my face. I didn't hear that specifically, but I had coaches. One of them actually told me I needed to get a haircut and gave me the number and the name of his barber while I was there for a training camp, and I did. And I mean, to be fair, it was one of the best haircuts I've ever had. But it shows just how I didn't change the dye or anything on it. I just changed the length of it, and I understand where they're coming from from that point. And the coach himself was, lovely human being. It was just he understood that the judges would do things like this, and that he wanted me to have the best chance possible. It's one of those things that we shouldn't have to do. People should be able to have, of course, safety concerns warranted, but people should be able to be allowed to express themselves with their hair. And all natural hair colors and unnatural hair colors are welcome.
Bobby, have you ever felt unseen within the sport? Because I know you're talking right now about how you really stood out and you've been kind of targeted that way. Have you ever felt unseen?
I don't think unseen is the best word to describe some things that I've felt, but I feel misunderstood. I mean, I'm bisexual, so I get told by girls a lot that I seem super gay, especially from my Instagram feed, which is, it's not overly fruity. It's more just very acrobatic, and I think one of the things that contributes to that is just the societal belief that guys don't do that, right? And one of my favorite skills is arch handstand, and there's a lot of stigmatism towards men being really flexible. And I'm very proud of how I've developed my flexibility. I'm very proud of how I've trained myself, and I feel very misunderstood often because of my participation in a specific sport, or my abilities, or the things that I like to train and do don't necessarily reflect exactly who I am. And I would like it to, or I would like there to be a place where, people don't automatically see a guy who does a Mexican handstand and say, oh, wow, okay, he must be gay if he's that bendy. Because I've heard that line before, and that's, that's not my favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And you look at some of the best surf performers, and they're male contortionists. They're
right.
incredible.
Dima Shine.
Shanae, you know that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the list goes on and on. So I always think about that too whenever anyone's speaking about within acrobatic gymnastics, and I say exactly what they're trying to conform out of you right now is exactly what's going to give you your career later on, which is, such a contrast and such an interesting thing when you think about it in terms of what they are trying to instill in you, of what you need to relinquish in order to be successful at some point in your life. But if you're looking at the evolution of your career, like we were so gifted with having Yuri, who knew that we would go beyond competing, and that it wasn't just about this moment. It was about creating, getting you ready for the rest of your life as a performer if you sought to do that. But it's fascinating that those things do become the most valuable components of what you can be as a performer in the future.
Mm-hmm. What good advice.
Mm-hmm. Sean, do you want to speak to that as well? Could you give us your perspective on how LGBTQ members at times may feel unseen or, as Bobby said, misunderstood?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it doesn't come from necessarily inside the sport, but from outside the sport. Because I definitely remember looking at acro before I joined and thinking, like, man, that's kind of gay. That's kind of, and of course that was many years ago, and like now that I'm in it, I can understand it better. But I think it's really something you have to experience and understand before you can point fingers at it. So I wouldn't say they don't stand out, because I think they do, and it's good that they stand out, like in their own way. Hey, Caleb. Sorry, I'm not at my house.
It's all good.
I can understand how you see that from a societal perspective too, because most of the misunderstanding or the stigmatism that I see it does stem societally. There are athletes that I've had that, I even thought in my head, like, they acted super fruity, that turned out to be, very straight, very cis. But because of my own internal homophobia, which, does exist in gay people, and my own internal belief on what people act like and how they actually are, it contributed to me thinking differently about that person, thinking that person, may need more role models that were of LGBTQ. Sorry, I'm losing my train of words here. They may need more LGBTQ role models just because, they may not have felt comfortable coming out. But, eventually talking to these athletes more and learning more about them as human beings and not putting them into a box from how they behave or what they're interested in, it's helped me as a person grow, even though I thought that, I've been through it, so I should know this stuff already.
That's a good point. Because, judgment exists within all of us, right? So it's so good, especially during this time in history and relating to Black Lives Matter, is really looking at yourself and seeing where you can improve and the areas that you've not done well. Forgive yourself, because we're all growing, but important for all of us, regardless of what state we're in, to really self-reflect. Our anonymous guest, she said that when she was asked if she ever felt unseen, she said, "I don't think I've ever felt unseen directly, but my paranoia that I would not be accepted if my teammates and coaches knew I was LGBTQ+, gave me this sense of being unseen." So we see how, even if it's not direct, it can be an indirect way of not being able to kind of express yourself or not being celebrated.
Right.
It's like you're disappointed if you're gay.
What was that?
It almost feels like, just from my perspective at least, like I felt like coming out was me disappointing people. Like I misread them somehow. Of course not, but it's how I felt. And I think I don't think I'm alone in that feeling.
No.
Right. Very true.
Yes, very true. I have heard that, unfortunately, so many times when LGBTQ members have come out that they felt like they have disappointed others. That's a sentiment that I've heard across the board many times.
Bobby, I want to say personally that you're a light. So don't dim yourself ever, because I love your self-expression. I love your confidence. I love the way that you really are out there with who you are. It really is a beautiful thing. So I'm glad that you've been able to come to that place. Yeah.
That makes me so happy. You have no idea how much it means to me.
Good. Well, I mean it.
Oh, yes, and to remind everyone that you can never disappoint people for being who you truly are. There's no such thing. No such thing.
I agree. Yeah.
Derrick Chisamore. Oh, that's okay. Please continue.
Yeah. One thing I'd want to touch on is just leotards, because I think leotards were like a huge, huge deal, especially like for me personally getting into acro. I was super afraid to wear a leotard because I was like, people are going to think I'm gay. I'm already being teased for being an acro, and I'm already being teased for being able to do the split, but like this is even worse. And it's a really weird journey to like start that way and then end up feeling a superhero at the end of like your first or second season, like wearing a leotard. And I wish people could like experience that, because it's so weird. It's so weird.
So cool.
Same with like wear a leotard at least once.
Yes, absolutely. And same with just normal gym clothes, because I remember like again, first year in men's 4, I was afraid to pull up my shorts like for doing men's 4 skills, because a lot of it is standing on thighs and powering up that way, stacking towers. And my coach would be like, "Sean, pull your pants up." I was like, "No, I don't want to show my thigh. Like there's girls here. I don't want to show my upper thigh." And it was a really weird thing to get over. And I think that's also a strange stigma to have.
Well,
definitely.
It's not strange at all. I think you're not alone in that. We're taught often that we need to dress and behave in a very certain way. And I mean, I know for me personally, I was caught between not wanting to look and not wanting to act gay, but also really, really wanting to wear the sparkliest leotard I could find because it was so cool.
It's such a good feeling, like wearing it. I want to say it again, like you feel like a superhero, like you could fly.
You really do.
It's so empowering.
So Shanae and I's last year together, we knew, we were going into this trying to win worlds again, and that became one of the biggest challenges probably of my life, which I think you might agree, Shanae, is that coming at this a second time and trying to prove yourself, quote unquote, to the world. So, Yuri was like, you guys need to stand out even more. So when we're getting our leotards created for our final combined routine, this is my last year in acro, he opted for this bright pink and red unitard for me. That was like the most outlandish, brightest thing I've ever seen, right? And it's skin tight. And, you know, Shanae's had all the sheer to it, which ended up being, you know, they ended up banning so much sheer material because she wore that, but it was gorgeous. So I just remember, I don't know if you remember this, Shanae, but walking out at regional championships, when I first got this leotard, I walk out and I literally hear a collective gasp from the crowd. People are just like, and I knew it was because of this like pink and red leotard, you know, but I embraced it, and Yuri was like, what? You be proud. Like, you look great. This is good. And, you know, I fortunately had someone like that in my corner, the most important person to me at that moment, telling me that. So I think, you know, the support of the athletes and support of the coaches in general really helped you get to that place. And by the end, I did feel like a superhero, Sean. Like, you're right. And, you know, Max from Realis, I crack up at him because he used to wear his leotard all around town. He'd drive up in his Mustang, get out, like wearing his shiny leotard, and he was super proud of it. And like, you know, I mean, it was just amazing. So I agree. It's awesome. A very interesting thing.
I was hoping that you were going to bring that up because that's exactly what came to me when Sean brought up the whole idea, the whole costume superhero thing, because that was the challenge. I think that was one of the most challenging experiences that you had, and it was so beautiful, but it was so like really okay, yes, okay, Yuri.
I was like, really? It pays off. Like, yeah.
You're taking it there, and we are going there. Okay.
Yep.
Yuri is just magic that way. We cannot say it enough. He is.
He is a visionary. I gotta hand it to him.
Oh yes.
Ahead of his time.
And always. Yeah,
exactly. Do you want to speak to Derrick, Shanae, or about Derrick?
Yes, thank you so much, Arthur. So Derrick Chisamore, he also revealed that as an acrobatic gymnast, that the athletes didn't help either within his allyship and how he felt as an LGBTQ member. At a majority of the competitions, he said, I felt alone because I was the only out athlete in my age group. It's bittersweet for me to see athletes I grew up with now and see how they are out and proud. I'm happy for them to live their authentic lives, of course, but I can't help but think back to the various moments backstage where they made fun of me or made me feel uncomfortable for being there.
I remember seeing Derrick, and I remember, I didn't know him very well at the time, and Shanae, you and I were extremely focused at competition, so it wasn't as much of a social event for us, but I definitely remember seeing him and feeling something from him, I was able to choreograph a routine for him in his very last year, and unfortunately, I don't think they actually ever competed that routine, but we talked about it recently, and I relished that experience because I wanted to give him his moment to feel like he could express himself really, really well, and I just felt, because I could see him kind of being an outcast, and I felt really sad about that, and one of the beautiful things about acro, and even acro in Shanae, when you and I did circ, is that the acrobats tend to be the most accepting, kind of cohesive group of people because they have to work together, right? So, whenever you and I did anything with other acrobats, it was such a beautiful experience. And I just hope that we can move that forward and identify those people that are feeling that way and celebrate them now. And I'm happy that he sees progress, because coming from an outsider, like, from this standpoint, it's good that he actually does see that progress.
When asked, what do you love about being LGBTQIA in acro, our anonymous guest expressed that she loves being LGBTQIA plus in acro because the more she accepts herself and is open about who she is, the more she knows that she's helping pave the way for greater acceptance of future LGBTQIA plus acrobats. She said that over the years, I discovered a full community of LGBTQ plus acro community members, which helps me feel even more accepted.
That's good news.
That's beautiful.
Really, it really is.
Yes,
So,
I thought that was beautiful.
I love hearing good experiences. You know, it shows that there is so much hope in the future. You know, not to say that everyone's experience was bad, but there were plenty of people that had to struggle through it because they loved it. And they were willing to put aside parts of themselves because they loved the sport. And we don't want people to put away that side of themselves. They never should have had to. They can just love the sport and be who they are.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yes. Yes. So, Bobby, if you've had extended time in acro as an LGBTQIA member, since you've had extended time in acro as an LGBTQIA member, thank you for letting me rephrase that, how has it changed? Is it better or is it the same?
You know, I can't say that I've been in for a really long time because I only started in my first year of university and I'm only 21. So I've had a brief window, right? When I came out, I was still in MAG, and it was a very different experience. It was a very different world, and I actually didn't come out to anyone in my circle of friends that were in the gym, and I don't think I ever actually have. I ended up leaving that gym and going somewhere else and starting over as someone who I am and not hiding anything. But I have to say that I only see an upwards trajectory for acro right now. You know, I'm a member of our acro ATA. It's our technical assembly in Alberta. And so it's a group of coaches, and we work on the Alberta handbook, qualifying for Team Alberta, and then travel in those events, as well as like setting up training camps and some coaches education. And the conversation is really beautiful because we do touch on subjects like this, although I don't think not nearly enough, and we don't have anything specifically written into our handbook yet as to, you know, how can we make the sport more accepting for others, not just it being, you know, the way it is now. Because as beautiful as it is, there is still room for improvement, because I do know that there are still people that struggle with gender identity, and there are people who struggle with their sexuality, and how can we better support them? You know, it's a really open-winded question because there isn't a correct answer for it. You know, representation, of course, is extremely important, and if we can give athletes more people to look up to, that's amazing, and it really does help you want to come out and want to be free as yourself. And I do only see that happening in the future. I don't see us going backwards. But it definitely has been a positive experience for me, and I think it's only going to continue being that, and it's only going to get better for others as well.
That's so lovely. Thank you.
Sean, what do you love about being an ally to LGBTQIA members in acro, and what do you love about those members?
I mean, each individual is going to be special in their own way, and I think the members that I've specifically been able to talk to and be friends with are the guys in acro, because I think the guys in acro are really, really a close-knit group, just because there's so few of them, and they're all spread out across the country, and there's so many group chats I know with just dudes. And I love being able to bring the guys in the acro group chats together and all the guys in acro together, because I know a lot of them are LGBTQ, and I love having to have a safe space for them to be able to, you know, have friends in a community within acro.
That's inclusive. I love that. We need more people like you, Sean.
I mean, if you're an acro and you're a dude, you should be making friends with all the other acro dudes. You just should. I feel like that's what you got to do, because there's so few of us.
Mm-hmm.
Love you, Sean.
Oh, thanks.
Love you. Well, we asked Derrick Chisamore, as a former LGBTQ member over an extended amount of time in acro, how has it changed? Is it better? Is it the same? We also asked Derrick, how can the acro community support LGBTQ members better? And did you feel as though there should be better representation for LGBTQIA members in the sport? And Derrick so wonderfully responded, from what it looks like now, it seems like the sport has had so much growth. It seems like the athletes are able to be more expressive within their routines, And I think social media has helped remove the stigma around hiding who you are from the rest of the sport. I also think the evolution of the judges and scoring has helped within that aspect. Now we have judges that have more open-minded and modern views of the world, and it doesn't seem like there are as many of these masculine ideals.
So let's take that even further by opening it up even more in the ways we've discussed, because that is good news that someone outside the sport actually feels that way. And if we could open it to, what we talked about, having females as basing males and just kind of opening up those gender stereotypes, I think would really be revolutionary.
I completely agree, and I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I completely agree. I think it's extremely important, especially for our trans athletes in the sport, whether they're out or not, for them to feel more comfortable and feel like, this is a place where they can be accepted, because we all have preconceived notions of who we are and who we want to be. Even if we have someone who would, potentially be a perfect top, a perfect flyer, who wants to base and really just enjoys basing, if we can train them that way and build partnerships that way for them, or, vice versa, I think that would be, lovely and extremely inclusive for them. And also not to feel bound specifically by the partnerships that we have to make right now as well. And that's bringing back, the comment I had about an athlete of mine that unfortunately left the sport because he felt like he didn't have a future there. Exactly.
I taught this acro clinic, not for competitive acro, but an acro clinic last year. And I did one whole section for kids and youth. And a mom came up to me and she said, my son is participating in your clinic tomorrow, and he's 15 and he's trans, and he's just had top surgery, and he's in this very vulnerable place. So I just wanted to let you know. And I told her immediately, of course, that makes no difference to me, and I'm completely supportive, and and thank you for helping me be aware of that. And I want to look toward the world and a sport where we don't actually have to have that conversation, because it's just something that's normal and accepted. And I'm grateful to have had that experience, and I look forward to when we have those experiences in acro, because it's going to happen. It's going to come.
Completely agreed. And that is beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
Yes. Even that there was that discussion and that openness makes me feel very good. Just that you had that conversation.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing more and more support for that just in general in society with, what the Supreme Court just passed, and really beautiful things like that. And our sport is going to need to stay current and, adjust to those things. And I have faith. I have faith in them that they will, especially because the community is so powerful and open. So it's really making sure that it goes to the highest level, that our officials and our general overall structure and rules can accompany that, in my opinion. And on that note, Sean, do you have an idea about how the acro community and USA Gymnastics in particular can support the LGBTQ plus community better or more fully?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just an individual as an athlete, just go be friends with other athletes. It's that easy. Honestly, just listen to them, be friends with them, talk to them, have conversations, and educate yourself. I really think it's that easy if you're an individual athlete.
I love that.
How
beautiful.
about
I love that too. It's so simplistic and so beautiful.
And it's a great life lesson.
And it really shows that the power is in the people, right? So our community will push everything forward. That's one reason why acro has lasted so long. We've always wanted it to grow, and regardless of any of the restrictions or challenges we faced, it still manages to just hang in there. And that's because of us. That's because of all of us, because we love it. So you saying that, Sean, is really important, because that message is going to be pervasive.
Absolutely.
Arthur Valverde had this to say. He said, I think the acro community can support the LGBTQIA community much better, along with BIPOC, by letting routines actually be artistic and multifaceted, which is kind of what we were talking about. He said, and removing the color bias that's intrinsic in gymnastics with strong footholds in East Europe and Russia, for example, rhythmic and acro. It shows in the favoritism of colorism along with the routines that typically don't win with Middle Eastern sounding music. In addition, I don't think queer people are allowed to represent themselves as fully as they can as athletes and as coaches to get to higher levels. I feel like the major organizations take a greater look at how other coaches are. It's a real interesting statement from him about that. Because he's experiencing such a personal amount of freedom and, acceptance in his own circle. So, and I don't think he's wrong, honestly. I do see that. So really just being mindful. I
agree. And I think a big part of it comes down to coaches' education, not just on how we teach the skills and how we design our training plans for the year, but also, how can we make a safer space for our athletes? How can you speak and how can your behavior influence how your athletes can not only relate to you, but also confide in you? We're all mandatory reporters for sexual crimes, and we should all be safe people and safe places for athletes to talk about things that, they may necessarily not be able to talk about at home. And we should be able to have guidance, be able to give, numbers for, or not even just numbers, but give advice onto which organizations can help youth that are in need or in who need some support or who are worried about coming out with their families and with their personal life. It goes beyond the gym. And for coaches, I don't know what the education system for coaches is like in the States, but in Canada we have NCCP, and those courses really need to include how to talk to athletes because there's not enough of that. And, when you bring in your own stigma and your own bias that maybe you grew up with or maybe it became intrinsic to you because of your community, but learning how to overcome that and how to make sure you can create an environment in your gym where it's not a thing where you need to be worried about coming out or it's something that is normal. You are able to be who you are.
I love that exists.
Yes. Yeah. It's not the exception, but the rule. Our lovely anonymous guest responded to the question, how can the acro community support you better or more fully with? She said, I think the acro community could do more to emphasize that it does not matter who you are in regards to your sexual orientation, race, religion, gender identity, etc., as long as you appreciate and participate in the community. Acro taught me how to be resilient, hardworking, dedicated, and determined. Yet there is more we can always do to help everyone feel welcomed and accepted into the amazing sport and community as a whole. I just love that.
Bobby, that actually echoes what you just said, which is really great. And I love that there is that coach's education. I'm not aware that there is that coach's education in this country. Do you know, Sean?
I've taken a few coaching courses, and a lot of the questions and exercises that you run through are very basic. I don't remember anything about specifically LGBTQ athletes or how to talk to them, but a lot of the questions were just like, if you see hazing, do you either A, intervene, B, join in and help bully the kid, or C, walk away and pretend you didn't see anything? Like, it's just very basic, rudimentary questions.
I think
that's what our Making Ethical Decisions course is like. We have to take a lot of courses here in Canada. So that's a theory component for us here. And again, it's it's very easy to pick the correct answer. It is the thing. And it doesn't
they don't
give, no, they really don't. And it doesn't really make you think, right?
Right.
Some of these coaching courses should really make you think, how can I be better? How can I support others better? How can I determine whether or not I have bias?
That's how we can actually learn from, the USA can benefit from Canada. I'm actually going to check in after this and see if we do have something like that in place, and if we don't, how to implement something like that, because it's a great idea.
Yes, it needs to be implemented.
Love it.
Mhm. Yes. Well, and so Bobby, could you elaborate a little bit even further then? Because I wanted to ask again, how can the acro community support you better or more fully before and even now? And what are other levels of support that can be offered within the community?
This is such a broad question. I do absolutely love it. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be able to give an absolutely perfect answer here, and pardon if I ramble sometimes.
Please do.
But I do think, I mean, personally, when I was young, I was very gender dysphoric. I mean, I do identify as male, and I'm definitely cis, but I didn't feel that way growing up, and so I also felt very alone in that. I didn't really feel like I could relate to any of my friends, and I didn't really think that I had a good place I could talk either, because in gymnastics, typically we're taught to be very obedient. We're taught to do exactly what you're told to do, and I mean, for some aspects, that's okay. You need to do a cartwheel a specific way. You need to do a front tuck a certain way. You can't throw your head back in a double tuck, right? Those are strict rules that you need to follow for safety reasons. But there are things that don't need to be followed. Like when we bring it down to artistry and we bring it back to that conversation, and we talk about how there's this bias towards males dancing more femininely or females dancing in a more butch manner, this really reduces the ways that our young athletes can express themselves and can figure out who they are and what they like. It's a big learning process at that age, and you have to be able to experience a bit of everything to figure out what you're comfortable with and what you really want to do to figure out who you are. And I think if we can encourage that more, it's going to vastly increase not only the beauty and the diversity of our sport and the dance, but it's also going to help young kids figure out who they are. And, gymnastics was a huge part of me of figuring out what I wanted to be, and I wanted to be a coach. I found that out pretty quick. But I didn't realize until much later in my coaching career that I wanted to coach not just because I liked teaching the skills, but I also really liked talking to kids and helping them figure out who they are and what they wanted and what they needed. And every kid is so different. Every human is so unique that it's a beautiful thing when you can find that you've helped someone or that you've shown someone that the way that they thought they were at one point isn't necessarily the way that they need to be, or that their own internal bias that they've learned throughout their entire life about themselves doesn't necessarily reflect who they have to become. It changes your perspective on where you can go and what you want to do in life.
That's powerful, and it definitely speaks to the complicated and multifaceted role of a coach, that's for sure.
I completely agree. Mm-hmm. More than I signed up for, and I love it.
Oh my gosh, one of the hardest jobs. And Yuri would always say that to us. He's like, being a coach is so hard. He's like, because you have to be a leader, you have to be a coach, you have to be a friend in a certain way, you have to be a psychotherapist. There's so many different ways that you hold those athletes' psyche view of themselves in your hands because they look up to you so much. So the way that you address them and the way that you support them is so important. So, I mean, it's really beautiful to hear that you're really continuing that as a young coach.
I try. One thing that was actually really impactful to me when I started acro was Shauna, she was talking about a skill, and she was telling me, I actually can't even remember what skill it was, I'm not going to lie, but she was telling me to do a certain way, and I'm pretty bullheaded, and I think I know everything for myself, and sometimes I do, and I told her, no, I think we should do it this way for this reason, and she let me try it my way. She let me do it my way, and it worked really well, and she was like, maybe I was wrong on that, and I've never, ever in my life before, Shauna, had a coach ever say that they could have been wrong to me, because you always like, right, you think that coach is perfect. Everything they say is gold. So I made it a very specific goal of mine to be very open and very honest about when I am wrong to my athletes, so they don't create that same bias, so that when their coach does tell them something wrong, because we're all human, we make mistakes, that they can see it, they can identify it, and they can challenge it too, without feeling like they're going against the power bias, because it shouldn't exist.
Exactly. And I think that was something that Yuri did so powerfully too, Arthur, because remember when we had a very difficult competition one time, he told us afterwards, he said, that was my fault. And most people wouldn't think that Yuri would be a coach to say something like that, but he told us, and that blew us away at the time too. He said, everything that happened that went wrong, it absolutely was my fault, and I'm sorry about that. I sent you out there in a way that I shouldn't have, and I take full responsibility for that. And that, I think, was, it was so humble and so beautiful and so disarming. And you respected him even more on a different level than that, because I'd never heard any coach speak to me. I'd never had a coach speak to me like that either, Bobby, ever.
It was like you're human.
Yes, exactly. And addressing the human aspect of you and really building you up from that spot. I mean, that's really where it's at. Sean, have you had any extended time as an ally to a specific LGBTQIA member? And if you have, has it changed for them in sport? Or is it better or is it the same? What has been your experience if you have had that?
I wouldn't say I've had specific, more intimate relationships with specific LGBTQ plus members. But there's definitely been relationships I've had within acro where we still talk occasionally, and I still see them occasionally, and I think we're still friends. Part of it is hard just because I've been removed from the sport for about 1.5 years. I haven't been in the gym recently, and so there's definitely still people from my age group and from my, I would say, generation that I still keep in touch with, but I wouldn't say it's nearly as intimate or intense as it was 2 or 3 years ago.
So do you see that there's any change, or do you not really have an opinion on that because you're not sure?
With them or with the sport?
With them in the sport. So yes, I guess both. Yes to both of those questions.
I just feel like I'm going to have a hard time giving a concrete answer just because all those people are going to be moving out of the sport these years. And a lot of people are starting to quit the sport now, and so I can't really say.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for that honesty.
Yeah, thank you. When asked, do you feel as though there should be better representation for LGBTQ members in the sport, our lovely anonymous guest says, I think the more the acro community embraces that what makes us unique can only make the sport stronger, the more LGBTQIA plus members will know that they can participate in the sport without fear of being outcast or treated differently. We are all human, and there is more the acro community can do to highlight that.
Yep, that's basically speaking to exactly what we're saying. Bobby, do you feel like there should be a bit more and we're coming down to the end here, just a few more questions, but do you feel as though there should be better representation for LGBTQ plus members in the sport?
Oh, of course. You know, when I was young, I didn't really have any gay role models. I used to imagine certain celebrities being gay because I could look up to them that way. And, you know, the only other way that I really was exposed to the LGBTQ community was through jokes. And they were mostly aimed at, you know, you don't want to be like that because you will be a laughing stock in that sense. Like that's the subliminal message that you would get there. And so when we can show representation of people who have done incredible things and are also gay, you feel really good. You feel like you can do it too. And it makes you feel like you're less alone in that community. So representation is extremely important. It really helps people feel less lonely. Even if there are other people to look up to, you feel less lonely because you know someone like you is there. And you can do it too.
Absolutely. I love that. Just real quick, when I first got into acro, I was literally the tallest acrobat I didn't know that there were other really tall acrobats. I'm 6'5", and so I happened to see a video of Evgeny Morchenko, who, owns Woga, co-owns Woga, and he was an acrobat and a world champion, and he's about my exact height. And I saw a video of that, and it gave me this hope, like, oh my goodness, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. So it's exactly what you're saying, Bobby, is that you're right. If we do have more people to speak up and be out and really speak up for acceptance and our visibility in the community, it will really help.
Arthur, I'm very jealous of you.
You're a tall human. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a tall human. It makes for a really long layout.
Advantages.
There's a picture of you and I in Banff that I found today, and I think I sent it to you. I come up to beneath where your arms come out of your chest. So I think it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I definitely was never meant to be on the top of a pyramid, that's for sure.
I had a really, really tall girl as one of my tops last season, and she was amazing. We never competed it, but we were working the feet on feet pyramid, and she was the only top in the gym that was able to climb it. Like, wow. Sometimes you are a very, very tall human. It would be a struggle to find a base that would be tall enough for you. But if you can find something that works, height can't hold you back either.
Oh my gosh, I'm putting it out there. It's never too late, right?
No, it's not.
Old man, long leg top. I could do it.
Old.
Okay,
it's anything about old.
You're right. I'm super young still. I love that.
John, do you want to speak on that question as well? And this is going to be the last question of the interview, or of our conversation, actually. Do you feel as though there should be better representation for LGBTQIA members in the sport? And how do you feel that can best be achieved? And what do you think is lacking within the representation within the community?
I think it's really great to have a few front runners of LGBTQ athletes in the sport. And I think in the past few years we've had them. Like, we've had Arthur Davis and Shanae Stiletto as the world champions from America who represent that community, and that was great for a lot of acrobats. And I think if we can get another group like that into the spotlight, that would be phenomenal. And I know that's hard right now, especially because, Worlds just got moved. Everybody's in a new transition phase. Everyone's trying to get their groups together because age groups are different and everything. But I think if the gyms start to work on that, that would be really sweet for younger athletes.
That's beautiful.
Because I remember, there were national championships where they would have you come out, Arthur, and it'd be like, it's Arthur, he's a superstar. And then, the next few years, they'd have, Ryan Ward come on. They'd be like, it's Ryan Ward, he's a superstar. And the next few years it happened, and then Axel Osborne comes on, it's Axel Osborne, he's a superstar. And there would always be, this continuous, face just for all the acrobats to look at and be like, wow, I want to be like that guy someday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so important.
It's so important to have people to look up to, and I agree with you 100%. And I do want to take this moment to say that I wish and I hope that there will be more representation by women and women of color and men of color in our sport as well, because
absolutely,
Shanae was such a pioneer in the sense of really becoming, the first world champion, but also the first Black world champion, the first Black woman world champion to be, in acro, and also to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And it provides so much hope for everyone else. And we're really speaking in this conversation to diversity. And I think during this time, and I'll just, Shanae, if I can just make my last statement right now, if that's cool.
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate, like I said at the beginning, you taking this time out of our current movement in this culture to focus a little bit on LGBTQ plus issues. And I want to encourage the LGBTQ society and culture to focus back right now on Black Lives Matter, because it is not our issue right now. Our issue is really the common issue of race and really highlighting that. And that in general is going to help every single other group that is oppressed in any way. But right now we need to focus on the group that is oppressed the most. So having this conversation is really wonderful with all of you because it really highlights just a lack of judgment that we really need and an acceptance of diversity in every way. So if we can take that, allies and LGBTQ plus members and really turn that towards the Black Lives Movement, I think it would be great. That's really, really from my heart what I would love.
Well said. It's an extremely important thing, and it's not limited to the United States. Every major city in Canada has had a Black Lives Matter protest, and there have been petitions going everywhere. There are new bills that are being drafted by our legislative assembly, and there's so much that is happening here, which is lovely, and it just shows, and it's unfortunate that it's taken this long, and it's really disheartening because you have to think of all of the lovely people that could have been, not just in the sport, but anywhere else in life that had their chances cut short due to circumstances that were outside of their control. And as trivial as the color of their skin was a reason that they were targeted for disgusting discrimination, to put it frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yes. Arthur, I love you dearly, and I'm so grateful for you. And thank you again for pivoting and putting focus on BLM, on Black Lives Matter. We are allies. We have always been. And I've always loved that because, like we were saying before, we were such rebels and such renegades, and we're from environments that are most oftentimes marginalized. And there, I think, is something so powerful within that of how we became the first world champions. And we were speaking about the irony of that, how we were the uncommon heroes, so to speak, because the expectation would be that it would be more of a Eurocentric pair that would be figures of our sport, and how we were able to do kind of the impossible and the unthinkable by joining together, even with feeling like we had so many things against us. And I'm so grateful for your allyship and for your love. And it was my absolute pleasure to spotlight for the LGBTQ community, because this community is so important to me. It has lifted me up for my entire life, and it has produced the most important people in my life that have rallied for me, that have supported me, that have shaped me as an artist, as an acrobat, as a competitor, as a woman. And I couldn't be more grateful for all of the gifts that have been given to me by every single individual that I know that identifies within the LGBTQ community. And so I want to take this time now to thank you so much, Sean and Bobby, and thank you to our amazing anonymous guests and Arthur Valverde and Derrick Chisamore for coming onto the show and for being a part of this eye-opening conversation about what it is like to navigate as an ally and member of the LGBTQIA community within acrobatic gymnastics and USA Gymnastics. We take this time to acknowledge you for your strength and for your courage, and we know that by having these discussions, it can only lead to a more secure, safe, and free environment for the members of the LGBTQIA community. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me, Shanae Stiletto, and my special co-host, Arthur Davis, for this episode of Live Like an Acrobat. Until next time, please stay safe, stay healthy, and happy Pride.